What is going on, everyone? It is Tyler McKinney back here again, and wow, what a game. It was kind of a little bit of a snoozer through the first half. We ended up with a 14-3 first half. We thought that DC was literally going to run away with this game, but hey, the BattleHawks came back, had some composure, and made a game of it. So, first and foremost, to start things off, looking at kind of the production of the game, actually it was better than what it has been, but I figured something out. The games on FX, for some reason, the microphones are just whatever the crowd noise, the live mics, whatever you want to call it, are just way too loud. If they can turn those down about 25%, I think that that'll make everything a much better experience. Seems to be when it's on ESPN or ESPN2, that doesn't seem to be an issue. So it seems to be like it's an FX thing or something like that. But listen, this game, it started off slow and, and really for the BattleHawks, it was the two lines and it was the penalties. It was just penalty after penalty after penalty. And, looking at this thing they had, let's see here. Penalties. They had 10 penalties in the game, and they've had I think it was like 15 penalties the whole rest of the season. You just can't do that. And expect to win. It was a dismal first half for them, and really everything that they had going for them was stopped by their pretty much their penalties and their inability to block for the quarterback. Yeah, it was kind of tough too. Like, I didn't understand it because Butler was your guy that was, making catches for you down the field, and why they had him running all of these hitches and these in routes and stuff like that. I have absolutely no clue why that was happening. It was just kind of a weird thing for me. St. Louis, unfortunately, it was like just a little too late. Now, McCarron had that, interception at the end, and Joseph, who is tied back in the lead for interceptions, had another great one. Joseph does a really good job of kind of faking out quarterbacks and making them think that he's going to do one thing and ended up doing another. And yeah, AJ McCarron kind of put that ball only where his wide receiver, he had a tight window and was trying to keep it away from the safety, and unfortunately just threw it where Joseph could just jump up and grab it. But really, the story of this game was the run game, and really on both sides of the ball. I mean, Brian Hill still had 79 yards and averaged over 5 yards a carry in this game. And then, of course, you have Abram Smith, who had over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns on this game. So if you were wondering if the running game is dead, it's not, at least in the XFL. It's not. And so, I think that that's a good thing, and we finally got to see out of Smith what we've been looking for, and a lot of it had to do with, again, the lines. The defensive line here they got pushed around this whole game, and then finally, there towards the end, they started shutting down DC, but at that point, like I said, it was just kind of like too late. I will say this, and so in these scenarios, when these teams are down, they get down and they're in these positions. The posture of the coach matters, and being able to keep your head and keep your cool, it really does matter. And that just goes to show you that Anthony Becht is going to be okay. Really, this team right now, they're still only 3. They're 3-2. Yeah, they've lost both of their games to the DC Defenders, but the reality of it is that they really control their own destiny. So if they can win their games, win out, they can get back and have a third game and try to get revenge on that DC Defenders team in the playoffs. So they're still playing for everything. Not all is lost here, but it just goes to show you just, how the demeanor of your coach can really take a team from a team that's kind of just reeling and having struggles to just being, understanding, holding your composure, keeping your composure, and really helping your team to get back in this game. Because really, add a couple more minutes back on that clock, and St. Louis probably plays things a little bit differently, and we might be going into overtime. So it was just a little bit too late for this team, but it was really just the mistakes that really hurt them, and the fact that DC just ran all over them. They pretty much lined up and told them, we're going to run the ball and you're not going to be able to stop us, and they didn't. And in the first half, it really came down to, it was really just two plays. It was the long touchdown run, and then the fumble that they recovered and then punched it in the end zone. And that was pretty much the first half. The second half, they pretty much just ran at will. The DC defenders did, and then about the little after the fourth quarter started, then the BattleHawks decided that they wanted to play. It was just mistakes for them, though. Butler had 2 drops. Let's go ahead and let's start breaking some of this stuff down, though. So looking at the BattleHawks, you got AJ McCarron. He didn't have too bad of a day. He kind of had an AJ McCarron type of a day. 22 for 34 for 236 yards was kind of surprising to me. I didn't really think he would have that many yards, but then again, he had that really big long touchdown pass, probably, which added to that. He had the deciding interception there at the end to Joseph. Looking at the running backs, Hill, a fantastic job. I mean, if this guy could ever get healthy, what he can do is just going to be, it's going to be amazing if he could ever get the time to just kind of heal. Because and with a hamstring like that, you're never going to heal. I think it's the hamstring. You're never really going to heal unless you get off that thing. You can kind of milk it along, but you can only milk it along for so long. But I mean, 14 carries for 79 yards. I think if it weren't for the injury, he would have been able to break a couple of those wide open. And we might have had 2 running backs we'd be talking about having crazy days. I've already talked about it with Butler. I thought that Butler, I don't know why they didn't try to go down the field with Butler in this game. It was just kind of weird. Mitchell came on there in the end, got that touchdown for him. It was a nice one. Shepard, really turning into kind of a kickoff specialist. I really like his misdirection thing that he does, kind of starting going one way, then go another. It really throws them off with that. But yeah, that was really kind of what they had on that side. And the offensive line, this is the worst I've seen their offensive line in a while. They really got manhandled by that defensive line, and it really just had issues for them the whole game, even on that last drive. It boded issues for them. So I don't know what it was, whether it was their penalties or that the defensive line. And I will say that the DC defenders have a good defense with it. Now switching over and looking at the DC defenders passing again, it was just kind of one of those lackluster games again for Te'amu. Te'amu has a really good management of this offense. He was 12 for 18, which isn't too bad, but only 90 yards, and that looks like what it's going to be. They're going to come out and be more of a balanced offense to start off and try to get up on you, and then when they do, they're just going to run the ball, and the run game really took it and ran with it. I mean, Abram Smith ended up with 23 yards, 18 carries, averaging 9.5 yards a carry, and 3 touchdowns. Had the 70-yarder and the 64 or something like that yarder as well. Te'amu had some nice runs. King had some nice runs as well. Had a touchdown of his own. There's letting King, throw the ball a couple times in the game now to really kind of, so teams don't completely key in on him. His touchdown run there was kind of a bit of a broken up type of a play. Looking at it receiving wise, Lucking Jackson came on with this game, but nothing really too crazy here. Wasn't anything that stood out with me on this. Keeping going down. Looking through here, Northrop had another nice game with it. The guys with the sacks, you had Lewis with the sack. Mintez had one as well. So did Wallace. And Bellamy had a nice one. So they're crediting Te'amu with the sack here, so I don't know what all that's going on down in the stat line, but five sacks total on the night, and it does show that. I mean, that defensive line manhandled that offensive line for the BattleHawks, and that was really the difference, whether it be penalties, mistakes with the line, and that they really just kind of, took it to them tonight, and I was kind of surprised. I was off on this prediction. I figured it was going to be a little bit closer game. And two, it came to be a close game at the end, down to the last possession, which is what the XFL wants us doing. They want us watching all the way to the end. All in all, it was a fun game and enjoyed it, and looking forward to watching more games. Can I just say that was a fitting way to end that game? Literally, no team wanted to win that game. They both were trying to lose that game at the end of the game. And hey, we had two 0-4 teams that were fighting against each other, but somebody had to win and somebody had to lose. And at least it was nice that the Vipers got the elephant off of their back, especially at home. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and let's start from the beginning of this game. And I am pretty much convinced that Cashman Field is cursed. Yeah, they still had malfunctions and issues with microphones, everything all over the place. Again, FX, whatever the stadium mics, the live mics all around the stadium are still too hot. I do not like them up in that balcony thing. It's terrible, but at least the field didn't look as bad, and you can definitely tell that it wasn't a factor on the players tonight. So it was actually nice to have a clean game there in Vegas. They need to figure something out with those angles, though, especially when they're trying to figure things out, because it's really difficult to see anything to determine whether or not something happened or didn't happen on the field. A lot of times it was, they're just going with what was called on the field because they really can't get a good look at it to determine anything else. And really, it didn't come up a whole lot in this game. It actually was like, it looked a lot better than what I thought it would be. It was actually fairly decent game. Surprising, Quentin Flowers got in the game, got to run the ball a couple times. The man got himself a rushing touchdown. That was good. But the story of the game was that, the Guardians defense, they could not stop the Vipers, and they kept getting themselves and giving themselves penalty issues, and that's what got them in trouble. Bright point for the Guardians here before we start going into stats. Quentin Dormady, way to be vindicated, shown that, nothing was the problem. Unfortunately, you missed being with your team for a couple weeks. Who knows? Maybe with actually him at the helm, they could have changed some things up. And let's go ahead and let's start diving into this and breaking it down from there. So let's go and look at it. Quentin Dormady came in and replaced Lynch. And listen, he came in and he had a fire lit underneath him. There's no doubt about that. I mean, he really stole the show. 22 for 25. Now, there at the end, he held onto the ball like Luis Perez did last week, and you can't do that. You can't get the sacks in the most crucial time of the game. You've got to step up in those, but at least he's a bright point that they can build upon. He looked really good. 22 for 25 for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns. I've said this before. They've got talent, especially at the wide receiver position. They just needed somebody to get the ball. The thing about Quentin Dormady that I really liked, if you watch the difference, Paxton Lynch holds on to the ball a lot longer, and Dormady gets the ball out. Not only does he get the ball out, but he gets the ball out in anticipation of where the wide receiver is going to be running their route, so that the ball's there where they need it to be. And you can kind of tell sometimes, especially, if Lynch didn't have kind of a rapport with the wide receiver, sometimes they would be off, and the wide receiver would be doing one thing, and he would be throwing the ball another. A lot of that has to do with when things break down and you've got to kind of figure that out. And Dormady, he had enough time for most of the game to get the ball out. The offensive line was giving him time, and that really worked for them. Looking at the running game, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great, but they made up with it on the offensive side of things. If I'm going through and looking at things here, so total yards, 364 for the Guardians and 392 for the Vipers. They just couldn't stop them at all. When you were looking at this, so the crazy thing here is Let's go down to the penalties. You had 10 for the Guardians and 7 for the Vipers. The crazy thing is that you only had one turnover in this game, which is kind of crazy to me. But it was a pretty clean game, and it was a fun game to watch. Keeping going on, looking at these wide receivers, Lattimore, he's just a stud. He's been playing really, really great. He had that amazing catch to get him within 3 points, pulling away like that. He had 8 receptions for 124 yards, a touchdown. Rambo had 5 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown. Lenore, who came into the season late, is looking nice. Rogers looked nice, and Thomas, really stepped in. They got a lot of guys that can play there on the offense. The thing for them tonight was just the defense. The defense was just absolutely atrocious. It was really, really bad. You give up almost 400 yards total. Have to give credit where credit is due. Looking at the Vipers here, Luis Perez, 20 for 28, 269 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, and he wasn't sacked. They held them at bay, but then again, it was a terrible day. They pretty much ran on them, which was one of the things that I kind of wanted to see them do. It really wasn't like this great game, but you've got Rod Smith, who got 18 carries for 3.4 yards a carry. He had the 2 touchdowns, punching the ball in, which was a big deal. Torrey had 4.8 yards a carry. Lovett had 4.6 yards a carry. Luis Perez had a couple carries as well. Looking at the receivers, the Jeff Badette and the guys really stepped up in this game. Jeff Badette had 2 touchdowns again for them. He's a guy that really he finds the end zone fairly well. Allison showed back up. Hadn't seen him in a couple weeks. Lovett did a really nice job of getting the ball out of the backfield and on some of those catches designed for the running back, and did a really nice job with those. This team, it really, though, the difference in this really had a lot to do with the just that the Vipers could get some stops and the Guardians couldn't. The Guardians weren't able to stop them in this game. That was just kind of the reality of it. When I'm going through and looking at things here, time of possession fairly, even the same, not a whole lot here. But when you start looking at it, it's really the just that defense just couldn't stop them. They had 2 chances. They had a bunch of chances at the end of the game. So they had the chance to tie it with the 3-point conversion, and they didn't have a good angle. So I don't know if the guy dropped it, if the defender really hit it out of his hand. I didn't kind of go back and rewind it to look at it. It was just kind of a moot point. 4th and 15, you can't really get sacked like that, and then to screw up the whole sequence so that they could get a chance to get the ball back was crazy. And I'm thinking in my head, on that 4th and 1, I'm like, you should have just took the field goal. I'm like, your guys are gonna just they're gonna screw it up. They're gonna try to run it. They're gonna get stuffed, and they're gonna get the ball back. But no, they actually went to pass the ball, and they dropped the ball, and they got the ball back. It was just hilarious. Just like the Vipers didn't want to win. They kept like, no, you take it. No, you take it. We don't want it. You take it. Like they kept giving it back to the Guardians, and the Guardians like, no, we seriously, we don't want it. And finally it ended up being that, and it ended terribly with the two penalties at the end of the game like that. When you have a game that is set up like that with the suspense and you still have people watching, to end a game when literally they could get it down within field goal range and get this game into overtime, and you've got 44 seconds and you can't do jack squat, it really does. It's not only is it bad, but you get sacked and then you have two false starts, and then that's the end of the game. You can't have that. You can definitely tell that Quentin Dormady hasn't been with the team to run the 2-minute drill, and this team's not used to doing that, and a lot of it has to do with just not being together for that long, and two, just young coaching staff, and guys who aren't kind of used to running things that way. And you got to see both of the coaches, get furious, get mad, yell at guys, and yeah, they both did that. But hey, the Vipers got their first win on the season. The Guardians are still looking for a win, but hey, I think that they finally found themselves a quarterback that might, turn this season around. The nice thing is they're in the South, to where it's really terrible, to where the things are still open for them. There's maybe a chance if they can go through and win out. They've already played Houston both times, so they don't have that juggernaut to run through. So they've got possibly some chances here. But fun night of football. I'm sick and tired of these 10 o'clock games. I really am. They're getting annoying, especially for us on the East Coast that like watching thing. Like I said, right now it's past 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to do a video on this because the game just got over. So had fun, liked it. As always, I want to know your comments down in the comment section. Let me know what you think, and we'll continue the conversation on down there. Listen, guys, I know that you're busy, and I know that I'm busy, so let's get on out of here. Have a good night. Bye.